One of the longest running Star Wars urban legends has been the rumored presence of a shoe at the Battle of Endor. Return of the Jedi visual effects supervisor Ken Ralston has himself claimed that he hid a shoe in the Battle of Endor, and because George Lucas never noticed, it's in the film to this day. Before I go on, I just want to let you all know that we are in the final 3 days of our Kickstarter campaign for our upcoming Star Wars fan film, Trial on the Island Moon. If that's something you want to see come to fruition, head on over to Kickstarter and pledge your support right now. The link's in the description. Now back to the show. For decades, fans have theorized and speculated about where this shoe might be, or if it's even there at all. To my knowledge, it has never been convincingly identified. Now, I've been studying the background ships of Star Wars very closely for a few years now, and while I've found some pretty unexpected things, I have never seen a shoe. So I was content to say, well, maybe it's there, but it could just be one of the hundreds of tiny specks that are completely unidentifiable. So it might be there, it might not be, and we'll never know. But then that all changed. For completely unrelated reasons, I was watching the Executor crash into the second Death Star, and I happened to glance up at just the right moment to see this. Huh, that doesn't really look like any ship that I'm familiar with. Wait, is that the shoe? That's it! But there was something that confused me. Ken Ralston had said that the shoe was a tennis shoe, and this looks more like a loafer to me. Well, maybe not a loafer, possibly one of those canvas slip-on shoes. I guess it could theoretically work as a running shoe, so it's hard to say exactly what kind of shoe this is. The image just isn't sharp enough. So for now, we just have to settle for identifying it as simply as a shoe. Now, of course, I thought it would be super fun to imagine what a shoe-shaped spaceship might look like. Obviously, the shoe is more of a joke than a serious attempt to depict a spaceship, but it's there on screen. Honestly, this was a really hard shape to adapt into the sort of thing that would feel at home in the Rebel fleet. In this particular case, the original miniature, as it were, is a literal shoe. So if I make a ship that's very faithful to the original object, it's gonna look like a flying shoe. But if I largely ignore the original shape and I just kind of do whatever I want, then what's the point? The whole point is that it's a shoe. It was a pretty hard line to walk. So in my mind, I needed to start justifying why it might incidentally look like a shoe, at least at a distance. That led to me reinterpreting the big foot opening as a sort of flatbed feature where I could mount something like a big gun turret. This visually gave the whole ship something of an armed pickup truck kind of vibe, which is pretty appropriate for the Rebels, but then I got thinking that the whole flatbed section might be where an auxiliary ship once docked, sort of like the Phantom on the Ghost in Star Wars Rebels. Maybe this was once a pleasure yacht with a detachable speedboat-like shuttle, and the shuttle was removed or lost or otherwise unsuitable for combat, leaving a wide open hard contact point where the owners could mount frigate-grade weaponry. So naturally, that line of thinking inspired a bit of a backstory for this ship, which I'm calling a Sprinter-class Caravel, produced by Kuat Systems Engineering. One such caravel, called the Pelea, was owned by Vence Zarmond, a high-ranking Imperial technocrat from the planet Lorinar. Zarmond suffered some humiliation when he was conned out of his starship by the notorious Kar and Cram Hobib. These rambunctious brothers owned a veritable fleet of ill-gotten vessels that they leased for modest rates, though they accepted no liability for what might happen if law enforcement or angry past owners happened to find the ships out and about in the galaxy. Many of their customers were themselves involved in less than legal activities, such as affiliation with the Alliance to Restore the Republic, an organization that Kar and Cram gradually grew to respect and would eventually join after the destruction of the first Death Star. At first, they merely donated some of their stolen vessels, but would eventually enter the fight themselves, with the caravel they had obtained and subsequently heavily modified into a competent vessel which they now called Wingless Victory. The Wingless Victory would typically engage in courier and transportation missions rather than outright combat, but when all combat-capable vessels were called to fight at Endor, the Hobib brothers, intent on not missing the climactic battle, installed a few additional weapons on their vessel, including a turbolaser that far exceeded the ship's typical safety rating. After the battle, the Wingless Victory would be called to serve as a landing craft, ferrying Alliance troops to the Forest Moon to occupy the Imperial facilities there. So that's my take on the famous shoe from Return of the Jedi. I hope you guys liked that little exploration into one of the oldest Star Wars mysteries, as well as my fanciful musings about what sort of ship the shoe might be. If you guys like my content, I want to let you know that we are in the final 3 days of crowdfunding for our upcoming Star Wars fan film, Trial on the Island Moon. It's a story of survival on a wild and perilous world full of mystery and danger. It's a story that really explores some of the core themes of Star Wars, but without relying on any existing lore. Instead, it's firmly rooted in the natural environment of an alien world, where our hero must learn from his surroundings in order to conquer the evil that lurks in the depths of the island. Robert Rose, who provided some amazing renders for this video, is also helping out with bringing the island moon to life, like with this digitally created crustaceous reptile. It's so exciting to work with such talented artists, like Agalos Katerinis, who's doing VFX composition, and Ryan Fletcher, who's helping with animation. We've got an incredible team here, and we're making something really special, and we want you to be a part of it by supporting the project today on Kickstarter. Thank you all so much, and I'll see you next time.